Welcome back to Smile and Scars, the channel where we bring you the most thrilling, jaw-dropping stories that remind us of courage, strength, and justice in the face of arrogance. If you're ready for another unforgettable story, buckle up, because this one will leave you on the edge of your seat. The desert town of El Camino was the kind of place where time seemed to stand still. A single main street with a handful of diners, gas stations, and rusty motorcycles parked in front of bars was all it had to show. Locals knew each other by name, and most nights ended quietly, until the gang rolled in. They called themselves the Vultures, a rough biker gang with leather jackets, skull patches, and loud engines that shook the ground. They weren't just riders, they thrived on chaos. They bullied shop owners, overturned tables in diners, and started fights in bars just to prove they owned the streets. Everyone feared them, everyone, except one man, Chuck Norris. He had come into El Camino quietly, wearing his usual denim jacket and cowboy boots, looking like just another traveler passing through. To the townsfolk, he was polite, unassuming, the kind of man who tipped generously at the diner and nodded respectfully to the locals. But beneath the calm exterior was a storm that the gang had no idea they were walking into. That evening, Chuck sat at the corner booth of Rosie's Diner, sipping black coffee and eating apple pie. The jukebox hummed an old country tune, and for a moment, everything felt normal. But then the sound of roaring engines cut through the calm. The front doors burst open, and in poured the Vultures, their leader Rocco leading the charge. Rocco was tall, mean-eyed, with greasy hair under a black bandana. His boots clanged against the floor as he entered, and his men followed, laughing, shoving each other, their presence instantly poisoning the quiet atmosphere. Rosie, the diner owner, froze behind the counter. Her hands shook as she tried to keep working. Everyone in the diner went silent. Rocco smirked. "Evening, folks. Don't stop on our account." He stomped toward the counter, slapping coins onto it. "Drinks. And make it quick." His men fanned out, pulling chairs, whistling at waitresses, harassing customers. It was routine for them, and usually no one dared say a word. But tonight, something was different. Chuck sat quietly, continuing his coffee as if nothing was happening. His calmness made Rocco pause. The gang leader noticed him. Well, what do we have here? Some cowboy too stubborn to be scared." Chuck looked up slowly, his eyes calm, unshaken. "Just a man trying to finish his pie." The gang laughed. One of them, a burly man with tattoos on his arms, slammed Chuck's table with his fist. "You hear that, boss? He's too busy with pie to care." Rocco leaned in close. "You got a smart mouth, old man. Maybe we need to teach you some manners." Chuck set down his fork, wiped his hands with a napkin, and looked Rocco in the eyes. His voice was steady, low, and deadly certain. "Walk away, while you still can." The gang erupted in laughter. The entire diner felt the tension snap like a wire about to break. Rocco sneered. "Or what? You gonna hit me with your fork?" Chuck didn't answer. He just stared, and that silence unnerved them more than threats ever could. One of the bikers, eager to impress, stepped forward and grabbed Chuck's shoulder. That was his first mistake. In a blur too fast for anyone to follow, Chuck's hand snapped up, twisting the biker's wrist and sending him crashing face first into the table. The man howled in pain as Chuck stood slowly, towering with quiet authority. The diner gasped. Rosie dropped a plate that shattered on the floor. Rocco's smirk faded. "Big mistake, cowboy." In an instant, the gang lunged. Chairs screeched, fists swung, the diner exploded into chaos. But to Chuck Norris, it was just another moment of clarity. The first biker came at him with a punch. Chuck sidestepped, driving his elbow into the man's ribs before spinning him into a wall. Another tried to grab him from behind, but Chuck's boot shot back, slamming into his knee, dropping him instantly. A third swung a broken bottle. Chuck caught his wrist mid-swing, twisting until the glass shattered harmlessly on the ground. A precise roundhouse kick sent the man flipping over a booth. It was poetry in motion. Every move was calculated, controlled, unstoppable. Within seconds, 5 of the toughest men in the gang were on the ground, groaning in pain. Chuck hadn't broken a sweat. Rocco stood frozen, rage boiling in his veins. "Get him," he roared. The rest of the gang surged forward, but the diner was too small. Chuck used the cramped space to his advantage, funneling them one by one. A quick jab here, a devastating kick there, each biker hit the ground harder than the last. One flew across the counter, knocking over plates. Another crashed through the front doors, landing on the sidewalk outside. The townsfolk watched in awe, their fear melting into cheers. For the first time in years, someone was standing up to the gang, and winning. Finally, only Rocco remained. He pulled a knife, his hand trembling but his pride refusing to let him back down. "You think you're tough," he snarled. "I'll cut you down right here." Chuck's eyes never wavered. "Put it down. You don't want this." But Rocco lunged. Chuck sidestepped, grabbing Rocco's arm, twisting the knife free, and sending him crashing onto the counter. In one smooth motion, Chuck slammed the knife into the wood, inches from Rocco's hand. The diner fell silent. Chuck leaned close. His voice was low, calm, final. "You've spent your life picking on people weaker than you. But tonight, you picked the wrong man." Rocco's bravado shattered. He nodded frantically, too scared to speak. Chuck released him, stepping back. "Take your men and leave this town. If I see you here again, you won't get a second chance." One by one, the groaning bikers crawled to their feet, dragging each other outside. Their engines roared to life, and within minutes, the street was clear. The vultures had been broken. Rosie, her hands still shaking, approached Chuck. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't here." Chuck nodded, finishing the last sip of his coffee as if nothing had happened. "No thanks necessary. Just stand up for each other. They only win if you stay scared." With that, he placed money on the counter for his meal and walked out into the night, his boots echoing against the pavement. The town would never forget that night. For years, people would tell the story of the gang that thought they owned El Camino, until they met Chuck Norris. And within 30 seconds, they regretted it.